Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. I was inspired by a quote I had heard years ago, but throughout the years I have been seeing different dimensions of. And in this talk I want to share, to be honest, my view on a quote from Rumi. Rumi, this poet from 700 years ago, he says, let me find the quote, I had it here. He says, "A secret freedom opens through a crevice you can barely see." Now, I thought of seeing inside this crevice a mirror, as if you see a secret freedom in a crevice you can barely see, but when you suddenly see the crevice inside, you see a mirror. I feel that there is a self-reflective secret in this world. There's something we have to reverse engineer towards. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, God is speaking to this archer. Krishna is speaking to this archer named Arjuna. And there's a moment where Arjuna asks Krishna to reveal his true form. He asks to see God's true form. And God shows him his true form, the true form of the ultimate. And Arjuna, if I remember correctly, he gets terrified. It's too overwhelming. I believe that a secret freedom, what was the quote? A secret freedom opens through a crevice you can barely see. That secret freedom is the one looking. It is the only opening. We have been, as human beings, so conditioned to see ourselves individually that it's as if we're looking at life as if we're a missing puzzle piece to something. You know, it's as if the world or humanity is a Tetris game, and the pieces are falling one by one. And sometimes the pieces are not perfectly placed. Sometimes they're perfectly placed. But the pieces are falling. In a collective system, endless individuals are emerging. You know, when I think about if the human being wasn't here, how long would it take other animals? Imagine there was no chimpanzee descendant. How long would it take for other species, or what would the next species be? You know, I found it fascinating. Why is it that we don't see lions like humanoid lions? Like imagine you see, right now we see a chimp that's kind of like evolved to humanhood. Imagine we had seen a lion evolve to humanhood. Imagine right now we didn't have fingers, we had paws. Imagine instead of, for example, uh, I don't know, imagine, for example, you see some rappers have gold teeth. Imagine there was a lion, humanoid looking lion with gold teeth. It's very fascinating that because we have opened our eyes to the human design, everything outside of the design that our experience is arising in feels unfamiliar. I don't know where I read this idea, but it was an idea where I think it was in 1948, or I could be wrong, that there was some person who had thought that all that we see that is this modern time of 2020, it's a simulation inside a machine that was made like before the 1950s or something. There's so many ways reality has been seen to be here and not be here. Language gives us a capacity to endlessly solidify something or evaporate it. The notion of the mirror is, to be honest, Mr. Within's addition to the notion that it really opens from within. Rumi has this quote. He says, "I have lived in Farsi. The word lip and the word edge mean the same, which is lab, literally Lab." So lab in Farsi means lip. It also means edge. So some interpretations of this quote say, "I have lived on the edge of insanity," and so another version says, "I have lived on the lip of insanity." Both can have different connotations. But the full quote is, "I have lived on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside." As if this human being was trying to fix a hole in the ship outside, only to realize that the hole was within. There are certain, you can say we are a multidimensional being with an outer realm where we appear and many things appear as individual objects. There is duality, there is separation. Right now, as I'm sitting in a room, I could see how I am separate to everything else in the room. That's the outer realms. But even if you were to close your eyes, whether if you don't close them or not, the inner realms are there. And the inner realms have no eyes that are looking. It's like sight without eyeballs, you know? So in that sight, there is every image the same. So think of it this way. You are like the same human being, the same person, you say, and you have different birthdays. The person celebrates different birthdays. This would be as if behind your eyes there is the same viewer that is celebrating different branches of the moment before it actually arises and happens. There has been moments where I can tell you I have known things where it hasn't been linear. It has been as if the echo of an echo of the intent of the environment that was just like picked up by the antenna. You know what that means? That means I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly feel there's a collective field at work. We just don't know how to acknowledge it properly yet as a species. There has been moments in my life where the inner realms have driven. There has been moments in my life where the outer realms have driven. I've been in the passenger seat. When the outer realms move quicker than the inner realms, you can't do much. You can only watch it. When the inner realms move quicker than the outer realms, the context to whatever you see in the outer realms changes. That means, imagine you're holding a cup that is not transparent, a cup that you can't see what's inside, what liquid is inside. Now, if you if your head is above the cup, you can see what's inside the cup. Now imagine you raise the cup above your head. Now, when the cup is above your head and you don't know what's inside the cup, there could be any liquid. The mind can endlessly fathom. So it's kind of this situation where the mind or the viewer behind our eyes has a sort of unconditional allowance to move, but it needs a condition to spark that unconditional allowance. That means first we need to be in a situation where things don't look good, then we can have hope. That means people don't think about hope when everything is okay. It's only when something is about to be lost, there's like, no, don't lose hope at least, you know? But what is that hope? We have to find a way to communicate as a being, maybe perhaps even before a human. I feel when we go to this level, it would be a revolution in modern psychology. That means anytime language changes, it's a revolution for psychology because people they have only words to work with. The reason even we see linguistic change is it's good we're not immortals. Can you imagine an immortal civilization not caring to change? Like imagine right now in 2020, everybody on the planet who was alive became immortal. You couldn't die. Do you know for how many millions of years we just accept the alphabet as it is? We just accept things as it is. It's like part of life for us to leave in order for new language, new ideas, new people to come and fill up the space. That means that's the thing about life. Really, there's no time to cry. There's no time to suffer because it is a passing event where at most you can press the piano keys a bit harder so the sound intensity of the sound echoes. Or even better than a piano key, you can see a drum. That's life really. Every breath I have, it's like ba, ba, ba. It's like on a drum. There's a quote by a man named Yunus Emre. Let me see if I can find it. Yunus Emre says, "Come, let us be friends for once. Let us make life easy on us. Let us be loved ones and lovers. The earth shall be left to no one." Eunice Emery says, whatever separates you from the truth, throw it away. It will vanish anyhow. That's the thing. Either we're trying to get out of non-duality through infinity or emptiness. Sadi, this Persian poet, he says, human beings are members of a whole. In creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. That means if a human being watches human suffering without a sort of inner retaliation against it, it's as if there is a lack of humanhood. You know, anytime you see, I notice something intense. Usually in modern culture, we hear, I mean, not nowadays, but I don't know, years ago, there was this whole thing about, even maybe before I was born, I mean, it's been always around, but it's this notion of, ever since the development of language and the sophistication of personality and identity of both sexes, there's something, however, that it's as if many women have said to many men, don't objectify me. And it's very few men in that moment have said to those women, don't subjectify me. Because nobody knows what the other's eyes hold. I have been surprised by life so many times that after some point it's as if you're like, all right, life, just do whatever you do. Let me know whenever you're ready, you know? Like, like that's how the mystical experiences arose, you know, has come to. Sadi, I'm going to read a few quotes from him. A wise man among the ignorant is as a beautiful girl in the company of blind men. Poor wise men. I never knew, you know, are there really wise men in this world? I thought the whole world was fooling us, you know. Sadi says, have patience. All things are difficult before they become easy. Biggest secret in life is endurance and patience. And I cannot avoid, of course, Rumi, the poet of poets. I'm going to go into a quick quote tunnel of Rumi quotes, guys, then I'm going to dive into the talk from, I'm going to continue it again. Rumi says, always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you'd ever imagined. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. Rumi says, listen with the ears of tolerance. See through the eyes of compassion. Speak with the language of love. And love at its core is union. Because why do we love? We cannot just say it's instincts, it's a calculation. It's like the intersection of the purest instinct with the purest calculation, like a double signal. like as if like a wave that hits the mind and body at the same time, you know? Guys, this next quote is epic and most likely might make some people cry. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes. Because for those who love with their heart and soul, there is no such thing as separation. Rumi says, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you, and do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come? That's the thing, guys. That's the thing, that many people, they judge themselves based on the past, but they don't know what's coming in the future. And this is so true. I can speak from experience. I wanted to be a soccer player. But now I've ended up sharing ideas on philosophy. You know, it's like life switches things around. Of course, in different phases of life, the energy wants to express differently. But anyways, Rumi says, when I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me, and without praying. From this I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me and attracting me. There is a great secret here for anyone who can grasp it. Do you see, guys, when you're honest, what you require comes to you. There's something about that. And it's a feeling. You know what it is? It's as if like when we are alone, there's a strange sort of honesty where whatever you think you feel, it's just you. But when we're with others and when communication is between multiple inner realms, then honesty is very crucial. That means you can say there's turbulence. You can say that the karma of our lives, a person in a forest, their karma might not be turbulent. You know, Lao Tzu, this man, I don't know how his end was, but like his life was a very passive, silent walk, as if some human beings, they have entered this realm, some beings have entered this realm and they have not touched it. And some beings have touched it. And that was the notion of the pure. Because the concept of purity in modern times has been lost. A notion of it, I mean, I'm not talking about physical. I'm not, of course, these ideas are philosophically oriented. I'm speaking about the purity of a morality that never did anything wrong, or the morality that did something wrong and then became pure. You know, if the concept of reincarnation holds, imagine there was, you know, there's stories. I know a couple stories about reincarnation from Vedanta, but I'll tell you this, that it's as if you just think of the fact that energy changes from one form to another, yet it is never created or destroyed. Technically, there is a dimension to all life that has never died. It can't, because it was never born. So the timeless is in the middle of the time. The timeless is the glitch in the system, which makes us feel we are more. You see, many people honor Plato in Western academia, but little do people know that he says time is the moving image of eternity. That it's as if what we experience as a linear individual conscious life is one side of the coin. What's the other side? And the other side has been the subjective unknown, pretty much our interests as a species towards what we all don't know. Because you see, the issue with theism and atheism is that they're both declaring. Sometimes I feel like while the theist and atheist are chewing each other, tearing each other apart, there are those, they are the metaphysical oriented, or I would not say metaphysical, but there is the non-dual and the agnostic. And pretty much the philosopher lands there, because philosophy is about questions expanding. I would say science is about answers expanding. You see, scientists don't realize, but philosophers are their greatest comrades on this battlefield, on a rock in this middle of nowhere. Because usually scientists, most scientists, they don't like the question why. They like the question how, but they don't like the question why. Because why gives permission for anything. That means philosophy, honestly, due to its lack of need to be linear, has a lot of fluidity. So I would say philosophy is the art of thought. Because there's a freedom there. It's as if, how can you move if there's no space? How can you expand if you don't see the unknown? Like, how can your knowledge expand? Every time I've known something or learned something new, it has been like literally the ripple has been felt all over the pond. And I'll tell you, there's the greatest force on this planet that I feel will inspire a person towards knowledge is finding a moment alone with the cosmos and pulling a string of what you feel is unseen. Because here's my approach. On some level, not a lot of people have asked me about this, but I guess I'll share it. The way I see knowledge and language and content, or what there is to speak about, is geometric. And I'll explain to you what I mean. You see, when Carl Jung said there was the conscious mind, and then there's the unconscious, it was as if he was saying there is part of the tree you can see, then the roots of the tree you cannot see. They're in a different soil. So what it means is that all the content of our mind is a part of something bigger. So technically, there is no uh, knowledge that is fixed like a painting on a wall. It is more of, where do things lead in a space-time continuum? And we have reached a point where we have mastered the objective movement, and there are those among us who have noticed that they are not thoughts. And so where are we left? We are left as energy and attention, prior to movement being individual meaning. You see, so many people fight for freedom, and it's a good thing. But let me tell you, it is easy to fight for the freedom of others. It is much harder to fight for a freedom from yourself. Usually people have the idea that domination or power or any force that comes outside of them that overpowers the person feels dominated. And here's the crazy thing. If a person gets too broken, then it's as if they don't feel they need to get fixed. There is that case that if you're a person who's had too many defeats in this life, you might feel victory was a memory. But let me tell you, the most efficient way is to allow, so that you send the echo in this realm karmically that you have allowed. Then whatever happens, here's the thing about honesty, guys. If you abide by your nature, now we don't take this notion that there's lords of karma, but in Vedic times they did. The lords of karma have no issue. You see, it's as if karma was literally like the skier going to a point where like they're going out of the mountains range for skiing. Do you know what I mean? It's as if any time you go off the road with your vehicle, karma is instant. Have you noticed? Anytime you don't pay attention to the road, karma is instant. And we tend to think when we are not moving, we're not moving. The idea should be that the body may have mirages of stillness, but the mind is moving. The mind has never stopped moving. Even in deep sleep, we feel it's not moving, but trust me, neurons are moving around. It's just that attention is like an orb. Of course, I'm sharing this just to add to the metaphysical archive of various ways that we can look at the idea. But I feel consciousness is a sphere, and in the waking state, we're inside the sphere. In the dream state, we're right on the verge of the sphere. In the deep sleep state, we are outside of the sphere. Now, the question comes, who is outside? And this is one of the most phenomenal questions. That the roots of man is a collective event. Just like how a tree has its roots in the soil, it's as if all these characteristics we see, the personality, is rooted in the presence of the cosmos. And I wouldn't be surprised. And this idea is not new to the archaic, but there is this notion that people are not just people, that just like how cells make up a bigger, more complex organism, you know, or parts of an organism, you know, sometimes a person buys tissues and sometimes, they have tissues. They already have tissues in their body. The attention is divine because it needs to be before reason is a relationship. Before any relationship we have in this life, we're having a relationship with our existence. Then there's all the experiential attachments. So guys, I'm going to continue with this Rumi quote tunnel. Rumi says, whenever you're alone, remind yourself that God has sent everyone else away so that there's only you and him. What he means is sometimes when you're alone and you have no choice in this life, take a good look at the universal situation here. That means for me it was like that. And it's not the best strategy, of course. I'm just one person sharing what I've seen, how I've navigated so far. But I'll tell you, there has been moments where I have felt alone on a very personal level. When I felt alone on a personal level, the attention went to the group. But then when I felt alone with the group, then it went to, in some sense, the nation. Do you know? That means there could be endless lonely people, but suddenly when there's a World Cup, they're all like cheering. They're all no longer alone in the middle of a big event. It's like that person thought they were alone, then they realized there was an earthquake and they suddenly ran outside and they were no longer alone. You know? You see, that's the thing. That's the cool thing about this life. Our teachers are not just voices. That the teaching was never a concept. It's the experience of an event. It's like, how do you teach horse riding? How do you teach skydiving? You jump into a sky and then land on a horse, and there you go. It's only experience. You see, there is really only two positions of trust on this planet. I don't know what other people are seeing. You're either trusting the world and then yourself is emerging, or yourself is emerging, then you trust the world. Usually people who are emotional, they don't notice they're an idea, so they don't spend energy. See, here's the thing. Everybody, think of intelligence as if equal, even though we have DNA, but think of the potential of intelligence equal. What that means is, like, you might be a person who your 100% may give a 50% result. That technically means you got to give 200%, and you'll get the same result. What does that mean? That means the potential is there, but maybe not the same. Uh, uh, the same route. It's like the people have different sized legs. And when they all climb the mountain, they're climbing different parts of a mountain. you know Here's the thing. First, you gotta free the animal you are, and it doesn't mean release rage into the world. That's not freedom. The freedom of the mind of the animal is order. The freedom of the body of the animal is chaos. When Freud, in his work, said that in the whole sexual urge is a sort of not your choice sort of self-destruction. That the whole phenomena of the orgasm is like a destruction of the ego. It's as if two egos are breaking because the event is so intense in the moment. You know, that means the attention. It could be the same when being pushed or anything. Anytime you move, your attention is embodied. Anytime you move. Because there's no reason for it not to be. The whole notion of life requires a vehicle. It's like a vehicle that's moving and we just don't know who's in it or if there's anything in it. From the materialistic perspective, no, the vehicle is somehow strangely hallucinating a driver in it. But from the perspective of the materialism, the driver in the vehicle is not from the vehicle. Kind of like how Christ said to be in the world but not of it. You're in the vehicle of manifestation, but you're not from the vehicle of manifestation. Do you know what I mean? The person is not the car. I mean, if an alien civilization, imagine we made contact with an alien civilization, the alien civilization suddenly somehow spoke and they're like, oh, we first thought you guys were your cars, but then when you stepped out, we realized you're human beings. We'd be like, okay, this is a pretty slow species, alien species. That's what I'm saying. That we take the appearance so seriously that we forget that every moment of intelligence has hidden dimensions to it. There's this comic series, Japanese comic series named Shingeki no Kyojin. And in it, there is a scene where there's this character who has incredible power but doesn't have experience, and then there's this captain of the whole crew named Levi, who this captain has experience but he doesn't have extraordinary power, but he's the most skilled person there. And he just looks at this like soldier who has this extraordinary power, but the soldier doesn't have the confidence or the experience, and the guy just looks at him and says, it's your choice, because we can trust in our abilities, but nobody knows how it's going to turn out. That means you can trust in any system, but excuse me, when we drink a glass of water or go to the bathroom, I don't see people looking for gurus there. You know what I mean? Things we can do, we don't look for anything about them. Have you noticed? Only things we can't do. Oh my God, who can do it? We run after it. So I'm telling you, the person it's hilarious that so many actions we don't have a second opinion on. Right now, I don't have a second opinion on moving this cup in the air in front of me, this cup of water. But suddenly, when people think about the nature of reality and universe, it's not as simple as moving a cup, or is it? Rumi says, I said, what about my eyes? God said, keep them on the road. I said, what about my passion? God said, keep it burning. I said, what about my heart? God said, tell me what you hold inside it. I said, pain and sorrow. He said, stay with it. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Sometimes in this life, um, of course, nature is nature. You go around a grizzly bear, there's a big chance you're gonna get hit. You try to hug a grizzly bear, it's not gonna be a good situation. Do you know what I mean? But here in this poem, Rumi is saying that pretty much in this of course Rumi is a mystic. Anytime there's a mystic, that means when a mystic writes, the voice is not only from the here. That's the kind of mystical writing has that glow. As if life had been remembered as an interdimensional event, but between dimensions that are known and shaped and dimensions that are unknown and field-like at most. That means the word field, it's like literally they got rid of the word God, so now the only thing we can call it is a field of intelligence, just because we love the seculars. I'll tell you, it's like, here's the thing, it's all language, it's all mouth noises. You think truth is mouth noises, then you haven't noticed there's a giant silence where everything emerges from, you know? When Rumi says God, pretty much in this dialogue, tells him the wound is the place where the light enters you, it's another way of saying when you are honest in life and unknown events happen and sometimes you get pushed or not. It's kind of hilarious. The wind moves the leaves, and imagine if the leaves were conscious, but they weren't conscious of the wind, and they're like, yeah, we're moving ourselves, but it was actually the wind. You see, the leaves have a life on Earth, but it's the wind that's moving. We haven't considered this as a dimensional thing, that the Earth and manifestation and the objective realm is like the leaf. It has an intelligence, totally different dimensional intelligence, but then it's as if winds are hitting the Earth. Like, what if in the future we realize that evolution is these invisible kind of winds, waves hitting the Earth? I feel space is not a vacuum. I feel we have lied to ourselves because we couldn't do anything better at the time, you know? Rumi says there's no cure except the retreat into love for the suffering of subtly afflicted hearts. And love really means you chill out and recognize it's a cosmic event, so there's no too much value to break things here. Think of it this way: any person who wants to be violent, time is the most violent phenomena. Time is the most cruelest thing if you want to get poetic about it. You know, time's um, backhand is harder than any thugs. You know. Rumi says, a candle never loses any of its light while lighting up another candle. That is true, but I think what Rumi forgot to mention is that the candle does lose sleep. Rumi says the inspiration you seek is already within you. Be silent and listen. You know? I think he's really trying hard here to. You know, this is what librarians say. Can you imagine if librarians were like quoting Rumi? Imagine the teacher is the kid doesn't know. The kid's like, I don't know what to do. I failed, and the teacher just starts, saying Rumi poems. The inspiration you seek is already within you. The kid's gonna transform. Honestly, what it is he is bringing the attention. He's bringing power back to the free will, based on how language is used. This technology, I call it advanced technology. Honestly, based on how language is used, it empowers or it takes away the power. What that means is if you're a great violinist, but somebody comes and says, play the guitar, play the guitar, play the guitar, you might suddenly feel like, do you know what I mean? It could be a deception. But if you realize, instead of you thinking you have to play the guitar, language was never you and there's a real you that's living a life here. Let me tell you, you cannot honor others until you honor yourself. And you cannot honor yourself until you honestly walk through the fire. There's no way out, really. You know, there's this story, they tell this guy, hey man, like it was at a bus stop or something at a market, think of it at like one person saying it to another. He's like, hey man, if you were in the, like trying to create small talk or whatever. The guy says, if you were in the middle of an ocean, what would you do if you saw a shark and you were in the middle of the ocean, you know? The man says, if I was in the middle of the ocean and there was a shark, I'd climb a tree. And the guy looks at him and says, excuse me, are you serious? You're in the middle of an ocean. There's no tree. How can you climb a tree? The guy turns around and says, you don't get it. There's a shark there. I have no choice. And it was literally how when the energy doesn't care to process, or when there isn't patience or endurance, it's as if the person has given up on understanding. That means if you only want to see the happy parts of life, you have probably semi understood a lot of systems, but very few understood complete systems, because there's usually two sides. That means in any system, okay, or in any mechanism, it's just like how we have matter and space, we have chaos and order. Do you know? And so we have ordered systems which identify in accordance to the response to the chaos. And we have chaotic systems in accordance to identifying with the response to the order. What that means is, for example, when there's riots, crime, there's less police to handle crime in the city. Crime goes up, you know? Rumi says, raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Rumi's probably saying this to Thor, you know, or Thor's probably needs to read Rumi. Rumi says, although the road is never ending, take a step and keep walking. Do not look fearfully into the distance. On this path, let the heart be your guide, for the body is hesitant and full of fear. You know, guys, I just noticed something fascinating that I don't know why after reading this quote, I was thinking about fire. But maybe this notion that, I mean, think about it. Right now, there is no, like, I'm looking at the palm of my hand, there isn't a ball of fire, like, on the ball of my hand. But in my inner realms, I can imagine that ball of fire. I could even change its color. Like, honestly, like how in certain video games, the person has a choice to build the character. Like, your inner realms can, your attention to your inner realms, subtler planes, your imagination, visualization can become very solid after a while. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the more it's active. So the point is, the fire in the palm of my hand in my inner realms doesn't burn my skin. Do you see? That's how we know that the world behind our eyes is not based on the laws of the world in front of our eyes. This is why René Descartes freaked out when he realized he couldn't doubt the doubter. Rumi says conventional opinion is the ruin of our souls. Rumi says the quieter we become, the more we can hear. By the way, anybody interested to any person in the world who's heard of like trying to comprehend the hidden language of nature, this is the algorithm. The quieter you become, the more you notice how your mind moves. So meditation is literally like you're from the beginning of the day, you've been running. Meditation is for a second just pausing and noticing just what's going on before anything needs to go on. Rumi says, protect yourself from your own thoughts. Rumi says the art of knowing is knowing what to ignore. Rumi says the lion is most handsome when looking for food. Rumi says don't dismiss the heart, even if it's filled with sorrow. God's treasures are buried in broken hearts. God's treasures are buried in broken hearts. That means, what is the God's treasure? God's treasure is truth. So truth is found in the absence of it. Maybe. Rumi says it's your road and yours alone. Others may walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you. Rumi says being desirable means being comfortable with your own ambiguity. The most ambiguous reality is that we are flesh and spirit at the same time. Within everyone there is light and shadow, good and evil, love and hate. In order to be truthful, you must embrace your total being. A person who exhibits both positive and negative qualities, strengths and weaknesses is not flawed, but complete. I think any time a natural system realizes it's natural, it authorizes, it allows it, like, here's the thing, the point is, it's not to find truth. The point is to get rid of all the barriers that there are to truth, because the truth cannot be expected in technically in mysticism. Rumi says, find the sweetness in your own heart, then you may find the sweetness in every heart. Rumi says life is a balance of holding on and letting go. And that was a big tunnel, guys. Back to the talk. You know, right now the species doesn't have the comfort like, we have to first restore the spirit of rhetoric. The pathos, ethos, and the logos. The logos, it is active. The pathos is getting there. The ethos has to be designed. That means it's like about time we turn the page and write a new chapter of history. You know, that's the interesting thing, that technically human beings are programming the program they enter for those who are going to enter after. So technically, the way everybody lives is as if you're acting like the god of the future generations. If we throw trash on the ground or whatever, or even if like there's nuclear war or whatever, that's literally as if like it's literally more worse the world becomes, it's the more bad karma. It becomes a playground of bad karma. You see, think of it this way. Human beings have honor. Now we're trying to see the planet the guy in mind is alive. Now, what if the planet has a sense of honor? Could it be that this life is not just a rational, expedition, but it's more like realizing what was alive here before life was left, you know? I feel it's about time that we realize we don't know enough to judge each other, and we don't know enough not to judge each other. You know, it's a very strange time in history where matter is no longer trying to survive in the fittest way, but it seems like the eyes want to see as much as they can before they go. It's as if information. Here's the cool thing: first we were in the jungles, then we went into the concrete jungle, then we went into the linguistic jungle, then we're going to go into the cyberspace jungle, and then the cosmos will be our jungle. For it will soon happen. It happens usually. I mean, of course, I'm speaking with the authority of my inner realms, but it's kind of like this, that in any phase of evolution, there's consciousness. So just like how we had no meaning, like we were children that had no personality or psychology, we were just like some biological organism, like recording the whole moment like a camera, like a GoPro camera. Then the child grows to a point where the parents call it by its name, the child records behavior, and it starts implementing. So what we know is that we are copy-paste machines on a very basic level from childhood. That means the child is growing through the archetypes of the parents or whatever is in its environment. That means when I think of the archetype of the grandmother, I remember my grandmother. Do you see what I mean? Like that's how the information came into shape to me, as if that wave of information hit. Right now, the focus should be to prepare for cyberspace, for the cyberspace jungle, for the digital era. What that means is, think of it this way, that in 30 years, potentially, we're not going to find as much luxury to just hover naturally. You see, right now it's easy to exist because there's no emergency. But if there was an emergency, if there was like an alien invasion, then we would look at our species and we'd be like, oh my God, like what the only thing we could do was just hit the alien species with nukes. But if the alien species had mind control, how evolved would our minds be? How advanced of communicators would we be? For example, imagine if there was an alien invasion and the beings' communicating ability was to a point where they could instantly resist. You see, sometimes in life you may not be able to attack, but you may be able to defend. That means even if you lose your sword, your shield is still something you can use and keep pushing forward, you know? That means there is no victory, there's just endless battles, and whoever endures with the most precision wins. That's it. Whoever sees more wins. Whoever sees more can change the value of phenomena. That is the gift of man, that our voices from the void allow objects to be born in our minds as value, as new value. Civilizations in, let us say universally, find themselves in a phase where, just like how the child becomes an individual, becomes conscious, similarly the species becomes conscious of a collective identity. Now it's as if we have identified the organs of the body. We have identified the different nations. We have painted the face of the earth, we have made walls, and we're like, all right, you get that corner, I get this corner, yeah, we'll be something for as long while we're alive. But we see it's like there's more to that. What I think is going on, what I feel nationalism will evolve to, in the recognition of the outer structure of the body of our civilization. That means the skeleton is there, but the body isn't. The flesh isn't. And that's the thing. Whether you see, trying to wonder if, a young child, you can say, may wonder, realize the human body as a skeleton, and then suddenly look at a architecture blueprint and feel like that blueprint of the architect is the skeleton of the building. Do you know what I mean? Like language, there's so many doors. And honestly, exploration is just adding doors. That's all we can do. That's the value of our DNA, that nobody has ever had our eyes, and our voice matters if we can notice it beyond that. The progression would be something like this, where first we need to, not first, but we can say we got to build the body. And once we have a proper body, there will be a mind to civilization. And I wouldn't say we have to build, it's simultaneous. That means the mind is receiving its own lessons and the body is receiving its own lessons. There's times where I have looked in the mirror and I have shocked myself. Why? Not because I have seen the most powerful archetype of, brilliant. Not because I've seen um, the soul in the mirror of the mind. I'm just saying that how can we evolve if we want to believe? How can we let go and pick up something new if we want to hold on to something? So right now, people are paying a lot for education, not realizing that on a rock in the middle of nowhere, exploration is the only education. That's the only education that has value. That means if I was to, of course, this is probably in my science fiction, I'm going to share this idea, but you see, schools give information too easy. That means when you look at the classroom, it's 100% the kids are sitting there and the teacher is talking. But what if the children in the class, they 50%, they made it more like escape room kind of game, but the teacher was like the whole class has to repeat the lesson of the day as a story. As a story. The whole class has to come up with a story, some fictitious story that represents the teaching that the teacher wrote that day in class. In that way, all the students would gather around and everybody would try to find whatever they can identify in their inner realms. You see, the thing is, there's no point of seeing great people when the world is not that great. You know, there's no point. There's no point of feeling glorified, you know, in a feeling, a wasteland is like a palace. Right now, honestly, Civilization 1.0 feels like the aftermath of a spaceship that broke. That means some parts of it is very advanced, some parts of it is just broken and meaningless. But in Civilization 2.0, sub-nations are the organs of the greater body of man. That who put the limit on meaning? You know, when you think about the concept of beauty, is it rational? Is it irrational? So many things in this life, it's as if I'll tell you, it's just impact. It's not thinking. It's that the being moves, and as it moves, the world reshapes. You know, guys, I'm trying to imagine something hilarious. Imagine an orca whale jumped above this guy's head, or imagine an orca whale just jumped above the water. Maybe not above this guy's head, but above the water. And the two orca whales, because the photo is symmetrical, hit their heads together. Honestly, attention doesn't have an owner. It seems attention is trying to own. You know, we take objects as our self, but the self is not an object. We take subjects as our world, but the world is not a subject. And the mystery still stands. That's the most powerful thing. There's no, it's like people got it wrong. It was an explorer. It was an explorer's game. The explorer gets to see first. If there was a quote from Oscar Wilde, let me see if I could find him. He says it's something about the explorer. He says it very well. He says, what does he say? Oh my god, I can't find it. I can't find that quote, but he has a quote where he says, "Experience is simply the name we give our mistakes." And he says every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. You know, honestly, like if we really were to taking things on a purely materialistic level, then everybody has to say, show me who you are. Like, I won't believe who you are just because you say it. You have to put it in front of me. It has to be exactly clear. But you see, is that freedom? So technically, we are wanting a multidimensional freedom, but we're restricting it to a singular dimension of matter. Matter's voice has blocked the halls where its voice is echoing. Sometimes I don't know what it is. I think it's that the world has a purpose, and its purpose surpasses all. And we are part of that event. Maybe a small fragment, but we are part of it. That means a drop in an ocean. Is it really just a drop? A drop in a river. Is it just really a river? When that river goes to the ocean, there's so much in life. Sometimes the inner realms can break you. And what I mean by that is an archetype feels like the energy of the body can't meet the demand of the archetype, so the archetype just gets rid of itself. It's like that point where the person was too tired to be egotistical. You know? They asked the person, "Are you enlightened?" He said, "No, I'm tired." Can you imagine? Oh man. It's like, "Hey, Buddha, did you understand the source of wisdom? You know, the truth of the universe?" He's like, "No, man, I'm just sleeping." Oh man. Sorry guys, I'm being too playful. Of course, tradition and culture, every lineage has its glow, has its architecture, you know. We're in the world once, that's why respect makes sense, you know, and because things take a while to get built, but it's much easier to break them. You know, it takes you a long time to build a house of cards. You can instantly get rid of it. And sometimes in life, when we dishonor ourselves, we may get rid of our own value by replacing our own value with a different narrative. So the solution is to this what? Now you have to start noticing subjects being watched. That's it. There's no physical thing. There's really, I don't know, like the concept meditation is not, there's no such thing, because the process is as the individual goes towards uh, the top of the mountain peak, goes towards the top of Mount Meru, they stop being an individual and they become an avatar of knowledge. You know what that means? That means all the Brahma lokas, they're just the explanation. They are like the light beams. It's the metaphor of the sun. That it is strange that we are not sun worshippers, yet we believe everything we see. And it's as if technically, indirectly, everybody's worshipping the sun if they think it's only the visible realm. That means the only way you can not become a sun worshiper is if you close your eyes and there's still something else. The glow of a candle that could never go out. That means this is what most people think life is. It's a candle in a dark room melting. But you can say it's kind of like this, that the candle wax melts, but the light doesn't. It's like that. Because who knows? Who knows how the future will treat itself? If it's smart, it'll move towards to see what its potential is. If the future is not smart, it'll ruin its potential. It'll lock itself to a self that is no longer necessary. Because you know what it is? I found it hilarious. Just like how we say, for example, like ideas in the 6th century were ridiculous. Similarly, it's like you can say an idea from a second ago is ridiculous. Why is the gap in time the suggestion of its ridiculousness? That means right now I could say life is good. And do you know how many human beings on this planet are going to be born? Some of them are going to feel life is good. Some of them are going to feel life is bad. Some are going to feel life is good. It's as if what I'm saying, and imagine the majority changed in accordance to that. There was a time where top hats was like literally if you had a top hat on, people knew you were a man. But now nobody wears top hats. We threw that away. We threw our past away. Yet, did we throw certain ideas of our past in our inner realm away? So that mirror is really how your mind can hide nothing from you, but it can hide everything from the world. This is why without love, man is a slave to linear time. Charles in the chat section says, what happens to the signal when the radio is broken? Question mark. And then Charles says, nothing. Let me tell you, the signal, even when the radio is working, nothing happens to it. The signal is the signal. The signal is a journeyer. The radio is the built phenomenon that breaks. That means it's like, how can you even know nothing when you are a thing? That means how can we fear something we don't know? It's like, how can the person fear death if they don't know it? Like, what is the content of the fear of something we don't know yet? It's phenomenal to me. Sometimes I think we fear fear. And that's why we keep it around. Honestly, when you realize life happens once, that's when it gets that's when it becomes HD, high definition, actual life. Who doesn't want to experience HD life? Because you can have whatever film, but when you get an HD screen, like that's, I could tell you, there's a difference. So that's the thing, we can't choose how the program moves. Yet we can choose how we move in the program. The best thing man can do is find allies. The smartest human beings realize that big events require big energy. What does that mean? That means when you see there's a task so important, imagine there was an event, there was somewhere you had to be, you didn't realize it. And your whole life, everybody was telling you, hey man, why aren't you there yet? Why aren't you there? And you suddenly realized that event you were missing out on was now. That it is in this moment where language is evoked in the inner realms. There's no belief system. There never was. It's just human beings going into different rooms, different states of mind, of interpretation of the ecosystem. And because there is an attributeless viewer, there is choice. Choice is an incredibly multidimensional phenomenon. Choice is honestly the biggest argument. That means it's as if, how do we know we are beings? Because we are being. And so, how do we know man will do well? Because we will do well. And so far, we're doing well. You know, anytime, here's the thing, anytime the odds are against you, compare yourself to the past. Anytime the odds are not against you, compare yourself to the future. That means it's like, you know what that means? That means it's like, when you fail, technically, if you look at it from the past, that's experiential progress. How can it be failure? But when you look at it from the future, oh man, I missed out, you know? So you know what I mean? It's just about angles. You know, everybody needs to become a conscious cameraman and realize that not only stuff moves in the landscape, you move in the landscape. And so man does not have wings, but the closest thing he has to wings is wind. The wind. I would consider the wind to be the galactic archetype. You might not believe it, but it is that which is moving, that which is not earthly. And you know what's funny? We may have this sort of fantasy right now. We're terrestrials from Terra, Earth, and there are extraterrestrials, you know? But let me tell you something interesting. The word extraterrestrial means extraterrestrials. They are just other creatures who have been born on planets of their own. You know, there's two types of freedom. There's the freedom you gotta fight for. You gotta actually live and realize that regardless of what goes on, you're still technically an animal here. That means we wear suits and ties, but some, you know, there's times where, you know, I see certain people, I'm like, wait a minute, you know, that person could totally be an animal. Yet these are urges. Man is just the movement. It's just energy that has velocity now. It took us 4 billion years just for the speed to be able to give itself direction. And that's the thing. Your attention is the modern weapon that must be learned to wield, to be wielded. It's kind of like, it's not even a weapon, it's an Iron Man suit, your mind. It's a linguistic Iron Man suit. And when you realize it, you can have different ways to move in it. Because I will tell you, sometimes it happens to me when I hear very beautiful music, I notice very clearly what happens in my inner realms. It's an event. So for me, I will tell you, there's how the idea of thought, what we call thought, first of all, I don't like that word too much, but the notion of thinking, and the reason I don't like it because it breaks down. Because it's a thought thinking, it's a thought. What is this? Is air, you know, is emptiness thinking it's empty, you know? Like, in my inner realms, it's like a symphony. And that is why I keep telling people the evolution of knowledge is rhythmic. So for me, what it is, I'll share with you like how these talks are, the way I experience it. It's like I sit down and it's as if, like, imagine you're sitting in the park and you suddenly hear an orchestra symphony. And the orchestra symphony, it's getting louder and louder. And as it gets louder, as the music gets louder, you know, that's the divine purpose of many DJs, to just raise that volume in the right moment, you know? And it becomes a situation. You hear a hidden symphony to the world that you suddenly find trust in the unknown. You might not believe it. The moment you do try, your unconscious becomes conscious and you trust it. So they switch. Right now, it's like, okay, oh my God. Think as if there's a circle and there's another circle above it. Think of the inner circle as the conscious mind. Think of the outer circle as the unconscious mind. Now imagine the roles of these two switched. Now all the unknown was inside absolute knowledge. Do you see what I mean? All of our knowledge has been based on the known moving the unknown, the known watching how it's being caused, and then systemizing the effect of it. But the mystery is instant. It's instantaneous. That's the glitch in the system. You know, I remember seeing this video from this man named Shri Prabhupada from the Hare Krishna movement. And he was sitting, and there was this, of course, very ceremonial, kind of like as if he had kind of brought India with him to America. You know, people were sitting there in that sort of kind of course, he was a worshiper of Krishna. I mean, like there was a lot of devotional practices or whatever, you know. But pretty much, excuse me, I saw a video of this man sitting on this chair, and there was literally a person fanning him, you know? And some person in the back is like, Shri Prabhupada, how long does it take to get enlightened? As if a question, the guy was saying it as a joke. You know, as if the guy was like, as if they all felt it takes so long and it's so impossible to get enlightened. And the guy says, how long? And you see, Shri Prabhupada was literally leaning back on his chair. He was leaning back on his chair, eyes closed. He jumps. He jumps when he hears this question. And he says, an instant, an instant, an instant. Something of the, like, it doesn't say that, like, exactly like that, but he says it takes an instant. Why? They all have said that. You know? I don't know. There's something hilarious that there's a certain level of teachings related to the idea of meditation that they're like, oh man, you got to do this for years and years and years. And then there are those who say, if it is truth, it is here now. If it is here now, then it must be instant. That means it's as if a truth that takes a while to get, it can, when it gets lost, you'll be like, oh my God, I can do that all again. So it's as if trying to find the least energy. It's a grand symphony. It's a massive elemental symphony. Jesus Christ, this truck is, get out of your truck. You know, life is being lived at such a high speed. Sometimes people forget they can actually move here. I find that the healthiest approach, and I'm speaking to, I pretty much see the listeners of these talks as in two archetypes, as the advanced communicators and the pilots of consciousness. And there's a difference between the two, but I won't get into it now. When you stop chasing anything, you can notice if it's coming to you or not. When you stop doing anything, like right now, if I stop speaking, I will suddenly, through the silence, just get you know, a flash of just noticing. Because for me, all of life feels like intent. That's it. When I open my eyes, my intent evokes the energy. We are multidimensional beings. It is now time our civilization acts like it. A multidimensional civilization, a civilization where there is necessarily no error because everything is in its own room. Like multiple rooms in a house. So, guys, I actually need a few minute intermission, but meanwhile, feel free to write questions in the chat section if there is any, and when I come back, I'll respond to them. Blessings. I'll be back in like a few minutes. Okay, guys, thanks for waiting. You know, if life is an instrument, its purpose is not the notes, it's how you play the instrument. So I can say that our senses of purpose, they translate as attitudes. And attitudes are, it's a correlation between points of selfhood. That means the way the person knows they're being good, they're being bad, it's in accordance to the mystery of consciousness, the mystery of attention is like nobody has pulled Excalibur out of the stone yet. You know, there's some questions where whatever amount of answers and attempts there are to it, we need all of those and even more. I have spoken about this idea called the subjective evolution. The subjective evolution is a suggestion that regardless of matter, there's another simultaneous movement. You know, I can be honest, I have seen what in my eyes I would consider God when I have stared at a street lamp outside of a window past midnight. It's been like there's some moments in life where there is a sort of solitude where there is no pressure or release game anymore. whatever is going on in this life, attention is where will begins. If the person studies their attention in this life, that's enough. Everything is there. Everything is where your eyes open. There's this quote, I think it's from, I don't know what culture it is from, to be honest. But anyways, the quote says, it's a very profound, wise saying. It says, when the child is born, the world laughs, embraces, celebrates. The child cries. You can imagine a child being born, crying, new infant entering the system, and the world's like, nice, a new human being. I'm pretty sure every doctor who conducts, for example, childbirth, it becomes something like where they don't know if that kid's going to be the next Einstein, you know. It's as if the doctor that, brought Einstein out of the womb, without him, there would be no Einstein. Technically, his hands had something to do with, Einstein's equations. Now, the second part of the quote says, so the first part, when the child is born, the world laughs, the child cries. Then, when the man dies, when the child dies, the world cries, but the being laughs. That means the way you leave this dimension, it's as if you completed what you were here to do and then you leave. It's like as if, like, the persons at the bank, they got the persons at, like, the grocery store, whatever, wherever they are, they must conduct the activity and then continue. Because truths either are taking us towards movement or they're taking us towards stillness. They're either taking us towards sound and noise or they're taking us towards silence. And if they don't take us anywhere, we're the watcher of every world that has hovered in the void. It's fascinating. Just like there's mirages in the desert, I feel like there is meaning in the cosmos. But what's fascinating is that the eyes that see the mirage are not a mirage. Your mind is the closest thing to a gift from the gods. Reality is not a story. Language cannot own it. This is why the message is not the finale. That regardless of what language has covered the future unknown, it's now there is moments where the person can, as I was reading earlier, I think it was one of the quotes, Rumi said it, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. When you go into that sort of kind of treating your intelligence as an antenna and just not doing anything and noticing, wondering what you can notice, it becomes like the signal can define you. Or you can define the signal and never see the signal. You know, it's as if some people are wearing sunglasses, looking at the star and wondering why the, you know, stars aren't shining so bright. Without trust, there is no evolution. That freedom is the self-reflective ability of man. It's what Jacques Lacan was saying, the mirror effect, that the child noticed itself in the mirror. You know, from a deep Jungian standpoint, I would say, it's as if the human being noticed its shadow. I mean, the shadow, the way Jungian says it, you can say this is kind of Mr. Within's view of the shadow. That you see, Socrates, I mean, I'm kind of jumping here from thought to thought, but Socrates, he had this thing where he said he was in the court and he said something like, I have enemies that are ancient and I have enemies that are modern. And he didn't do, if you see time, like if you see the concept of enemy not as an enemy, like honestly, so many sentences, you can just replace the nouns and it can be endless source of meaning, you know? You see, we must trust the world we have, everything has emerged out of. That is the ultimate honor. You know, it's kind of like as if even if there's someone out there who doesn't like these talks, it's at least like the world where these talks have emerged out of, because then indirectly you're liking the talk. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. There was a lot of pauses in this, but I want the viewers to clap for themselves for enduring through those pauses, you know? As Shira Amar, she says, silence is also a conversation, as we see in the chat section. It's, you know what it is? It's honestly, we're like human beings and we realize it and we're like, before the lights go out, we want to see what the greatest show looks like. Like the cool thing was, all our ancestors had one feeling in common. They were passing down the torch of their known life to the unknown. You know, without a self, there can be no judgment. Did you guys know that? That means who is being judged. That means I'm a person that is metaphysically inclined, and sometimes when people tell me, who are you? I'm like, if only we had the words for it, you know, the words for who we really are. Like, here's the thing, right now we're using language. Technically, I say it's an Iron Man suit, but we haven't experienced pure language. You know what it is? Language is like the mind. Just like we see, like, for example, a human being and then we see a statue of that human being, language is like the statue of a living mind through symbols and lettering. It's honestly a statue. It doesn't change based on how the design is input in the system. So you believe someone is good and you don't see them for years, you're going to still think they're the same person. Or if you think someone's bad, you're not going to see them for many years and see them and suddenly you're going to think, like, they're going to be a totally different person. That's the thing. Be nice to every human being because you will never see that same human being. None of us has the power to stop time. Our memories are like deja vus from a time traveling experience that never occurred, you know? The beautiful thing about our presence is that it's there. The beautiful thing about the wisdom of what people called AKA soul was that it moves itself, that the mind is burdened by the body, but once the body is not there, the mind for the first time will realize the freedom beyond its activity. When you notice that freedom beyond the activity, it's as if you notice death was the other side of the coin of life. That we see beauty in things breaking, in things being built, but there's also a beauty to them breaking. But that beauty is more about the meaning it passes on. So what that means is I feel every human being is, again, let's take that instrument analogy a bit further, this instrument being played in a rapid way, and it's making this like very intense music, and suddenly when the person transitions out of this realm, that music stops. But it had an echo. It had an echo. That's the beautiful thing. Even though we may pass away, there are certain energy echoes. Sometimes I look at energy like what is the first law of thermodynamics, as I was saying earlier, like energy cannot be created or destroyed, changes from one form to another. I was like, what is this one form to another? What is it, a dolphin jumping up and down water? Is energy a dolphin? You know? Is Marine Land holding the secrets to the universe? Like, what's going on? Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode has been helpful. I'm going to share a Discord link for anybody interested for discussion. Don't be shy. Life happens once. Life happens one, but also life happens all at once as well. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Blessings. And whoever designed this photo, I don't know who it is, but that person's very smart. I don't know who the photographer, whoever designed this, but was this picture. Honestly, whoever, I don't know who this. I found it at a random wallpaper site, but whoever made this picture just did a revolution. Did a revolution in symmetrical photography. You know. That means we're used to just seeing we're used to seeing like a person and one shadow, but imagine there was like two selves and there were two shadows. There was a yin self and a yang self, and there were, a yin and yang shadow, you know? Whoever you are, even though I ended the talk like a minute ago, but whoever you are, this is the value of life. That after you have received everything, every object, you have found the holy grail of the objective realm. And after you have found the holy grail of the subjective realm, the only holy grail left will be the whole world. You see, here's the complexity of the notion of enlightenment. When it gets to its inconceivable point, there is no notion of enlightenment. So enlightenment is a state where there is no meditator or meditation. And everybody's trying to meditate to get enlightened. It's adorable, really. It's nature. It's like the world is alive. Notice it, and you have given great purpose to the eyes of to the light in your eyes. Namaste. And once you look in that mirror, it doesn't matter if you could barely see it. Once you see what's through the crevice, it doesn't matter if it was a crevice or not. Once civilization advances, the judgments on the suffering of the past are going to go away. It's the advancements. It's like we won't have time to even suffer because we're advancing so quick, you know. All right, guys, I gotta go. I'll see you in the Discord. Blessings.